This is Matthew of Another World Terraria, where I teach and inspire you on the topics of rare plants and artistic nature displays. Welcome to part 2 of the Crown Forest build log. In part 1, I went over various aspects of concept development and prototyping, and then I built the custom wood stump. That took care of the first 2 phases of my 6-phase build process. In this video, I'm going to take you through phase 3, which is building the foundation in conjunction with constructing the majority of the final hardscape. Let's begin with the foundation base plate. Here's a preview of what that'll look like. This will serve as a surface to mount hardscape pieces, and it'll provide a small amount of drainage down the center of the tank where most of the plants will be. I'll also be making this small substrate divider around the border. Note that there's a gutter space around the left, right, and front of the base plate. Later on you'll see why I did that, and I'll also explain more about the divider. I took measurements of the bottom of the tank and then subtracted a couple of inches to leave the gutter space. Then I used a Sharpie to mark the cut lines on this plastic lighting grid, also known in the hobby as Eggcrate. Next, I cut the grid with my side cutter pliers. Here's why I use side cutters for cutting lighting grid. First, the blades are offset to the side, hence the name, which allows you to cut flush against the inside of the grid holes. Second, the blades meet on one plane, which ensures that the grid is cut cleanly, as opposed to any type of cutters that have bypass blades, which tend to shatter the plastic. And third, the short jaws, in combination with the long handles, give you a lot of leverage to easily cut the plastic. By the way, there are some Amazon links in the description for some of the products used in this video, in case you want to get any of those things for your own project. Now I'll prep the bottom of the tank so I can silicone in the base plate. I'm washing the glass with isopropyl alcohol, then I'm briefly placing the base plate in the tank and marking the outline on the glass with a Sharpie pen. Now I'm putting some painter's tape in along the marked outline. The tape isn't really necessary, but I have a habit of masking things. While wearing gloves and a respirator, I'm using a caulking gun to apply a liberal amount of GE Type 1 100% clear silicone. Now I'm using a cheap paintbrush to spread the silicone evenly on the glass. After placing the grid into the silicone, I lay some heavy objects on top of it to hold it in place securely while the silicone cures. Whenever using silicone, I prefer to let it cure until I can no longer smell the vinegar scent, or at least until it's barely perceptible. The next step is to continue building more parts of the foundation. First, I took a few basic measurements to determine what height I wanted the main stump to sit at. Then I cut out some pieces of plastic grid and attached them together with zip ties to create a platform. If you're familiar with my work, you'll know that I like to build foundations, usually out of plastic grid. There are a bunch of reasons why I do this. Here are some of the main ones. First, foundations allow me to precisely position all of the hardscape pieces at the exact height and angle that I want, so the layout will be perfect. Second, it helps me because I don't have to hold everything in place or find other ways to secure things while prototyping, gluing, or spraying expanding foam. 2 situations that this is most helpful are when using hardscapes that are not balanced and can't stand up on their own, such as in the Forest's Edge Kusamono that I made, and when you want to raise hardscape elements off the bottom of the tank, for example, like I did with the heavy Mopani wood in the 10-gallon vertical drip wall tank. And third, foundations allow me to securely attach the hardscape in position so that it's less likely to sink down, tip over, or otherwise move over time. And also, when spraying polyurethane foam, the hardscape pieces will be less likely to shift out of place while the foam is expanding. The grid block you just watched me build is essentially a platform for the stump. I sat the stump on top and then threw a few extra grid sections under one side to shim it up to the perfect angle. I then went back to my hardscape supply to find some pieces that could be used for the rest of the woodscape. I don't have any video or photos of the steps that led up to this point, but it's only a very rough prototype anyway, and you'll see all of the later steps when I'm building the actual foundation and putting these pieces in their final positions. I handled these 3 pieces in exactly the same way as described in part 1 when prototyping the main stump. That is, I'm not going for a fancy or pretty implementation because all that matters is getting the scape planned out for later steps. I also use whatever I can find that is the right size and shape to hold the wood in position while I prototype and make adjustments. In this case, I used scrubbing pads, styrofoam, painter's tape, and so on to position the wood. Here's a wide shot of the entire scape, which again demonstrates how I approach the prototyping process. You may have noticed that the small pieces of wood are arranged differently compared to the final build. This was just one of many prototypes that I did in the beginning stages. At this point, I wanted to visualize the layout and some substrate and grading to be sure that things would look right later, so I took this photo into Photoshop to do some digital prototyping. This is obviously a quick and dirty job, but it let me check the positioning of the scape as well as the visual flow and the overall effectiveness of the design thus far. This looked good to me, so the next step was to start fastening the main stump onto the stand. For that, I used Touch and Foam Landscape, which is an expanding polyurethane foam that's completely inert and waterproof when fully cured. After confirming that the stump is in the perfect position on the stand, I began applying the foam. Working with the foam takes practice, and there's a lot to learn. For now, I'll share a few quick tips. First, I strongly recommend that you wear protective equipment such as eyewear and gloves. It's also a good idea to wear clothes that you don't mind ruining in case the foam gets on them. Second, use a work surface such as plastic or cardboard that you don't mind getting dirty. Third, move away or cover up anything that would be ruined by the foam. For example, in this clip, you can see that I put a plastic bag over the aquarium in the background so that I wouldn't get foam on the glass. Fourth, use the foam in accordance with the directions on the label. And fifth, use less foam than you think you'll need because it will expand a lot and it's easy to overdo it, especially if you're a beginner. I'll be sharing more valuable tips and info about working with expanding foam later in this video. Since the stump is sitting loosely on top of the stand, in order to reduce the chance of it shifting while the foam expands, I put some weight on it. If the wood was smaller and lighter, I probably would have temporarily used tape or zip ties instead to hold it in place. Here's the fully cured foam the next day. It's time to start working on the foundation and the final positioning of the smaller pieces of wood. I took some measurements based on the rough prototype that I showed you earlier so that I could create little grid bases for positioning and attaching these pieces of wood. Then I cut and zip tied the grid together just like I did when making the platform for the main stump. Here's the wood zip tied in place. Now I'll attach the next piece of wood to its base. It conveniently fits in this grid at a good position, but in order to mount it, I will need to drill a hole for a zip tie. Then it's as simple as putting the zip tie through the hole and around the grid, and then making a few small adjustments to the positioning. I mounted the third small piece of wood using similar techniques as the previous two. Next, I placed all three small pieces of wood into the tank and worked out the final positioning. I spent a bit of time making a few adjustments to perfect the angle and position of each piece. This shot shows that I added more grid to the piece closest to the camera, and I also added a small slice of grid under the farthest right piece. Here's a panning shot of the overall scape at this point. And now it's time to talk in detail about my thought processes regarding the wood placement and design theory. Here are some things to note. All three smaller wood pieces are at approximately the same angle to each other, as well as to the primary stump branch. That is, they are all basically parallel to each other. Not everything has to be perfectly parallel all the time, but when done well, in some cases it can enhance the visual flow and drama of a composition. None of the pieces overlap visually, which avoids clashing lines that could make the viewer's eyes fixate instead of flowing along the design. Of the three pieces on the right, the smallest and shortest one is closest to the viewer. This is because having a larger piece in front and a smaller piece in back would ruin the visual flow and composition, and because the smaller piece in front makes it easier to ensure that none of the pieces obscure each other. Also note that the smallest piece is not farthest to the right. By having a smaller piece just to the left and then a slightly larger piece, also with a sharper point on it, on the right, it makes the composition more dynamic and exciting. The smallest piece has the lowest visual impact, so if the design ended with that one, the layout would end on a weak point. The heights are staggered so the tips are not all at the same plane. If the tips all met at the same plane, it might look artificial and could pull the viewer's attention to that spot because the human brain fixates on noticeable patterns. This layout also creates a natural pattern that encourages the viewer to explore a bit instead of just following a straight line off to the end. This top shot reveals a little more hidden detail about the composition. Although very subtle, the pieces closest to the front of the tank and the back of the tank are pointing slightly away from the center, so they are not perfectly parallel to the centerpiece. Although barely perceptible, this does have the effect of making the composition feel more natural when viewed from various angles. Once I have everything perfectly laid out, I can use epoxy to fix it in position. I applied the epoxy so it spans from the edges of the grid bases down to the main tank base plate, which securely locks the hardscape in position. The next step is to begin building up the underlying landscape with expanding foam. Here are some more tips for working with foam. My number one piece of advice is to practice on scrap materials before working with your final build materials, and let your practice pieces cure for 24 hours so you understand how much the foam expands. You should also go slowly and carefully. There's no need to rush any of this process. If you hold the straw tip closer to the surface, the foam will stick better and it will more readily spread through gaps, for example the holes in the grid. Be careful not to spray too much. Spray foam expands a lot and can unexpectedly creep over wood, push things out of place, and cause other problems. It's best to spray a little bit and then let it cure, and then spray more if you need to, particularly when you need to fill huge areas of empty space. The thicker you spray the foam in one session, the more likely it is to collapse and shrink later. Also, remember to leave space for things that will go over the foam at a later stage, such as layers of substrate, plants, and perhaps plumbing lines if you're going to have a water feature. Be careful not to get any foam on any display parts of your hardscape. If this happens, the best you can do is wipe off the excess with paper towels. Also be careful not to get foam on any display areas of the tank glass. Sometimes accidents do happen though, and in fact I got foam on the glass of the tank in this build. You can use acetone and paper towels to remove wet foam. You do need to act immediately though, and you'll probably have to use a clean paper towel and acetone multiple times to get the glass clean. Remnant foam may produce a haze, so keep working on it. You should wear chemical resistant gloves and a respirator when working with acetone because it is extremely caustic and has dangerous fumes. Be prepared for the fact that the foam will keep coming out for several seconds after you let off the trigger, so try to stop a bit before you think you need to. I keep a paper towel ready and then I hold it under the straw tip as I lift the can out of the tank. This prevents the seepage from dropping onto the wood or glass. Shake the can vigorously for 10 to 15 seconds after about every 45 seconds of use. Since the foam will be seeping out of the straw, I gently hold a paper towel over the end while shaking the can to avoid getting any excess on things nearby. And be aware that the foam will sag slightly on vertical surfaces due to gravity, and this will be more pronounced as the amount of foam increases. The next day, the foam is fully cured, the wood is firmly locked in place, and the overall tankscape is taking form. This is an exciting stage for me because the concept and the vision are becoming tangible. Occasionally throughout a build, I like to do some conceptual prototypes. I took this image into Photoshop and started painting. In Photoshop, I covered up the foam and the underlying foundation with layers of brown colors to represent substrate, and then I added some green all over to simulate moss growth. I do conceptual prototypes for a number of reasons, notably, first, to see if the build is on track and looks like it'll turn out how I want. Second, to spot potential issues that I didn't notice before, or to get new ideas that I hadn't thought of. And third, because it's fun to play around and see how things might look later. Now I'm going to build a little fence around the main baseplate grid. The purpose of the gutter and the inner fence section is to separate two substrate areas. The first area, inside the center baseplate, will have some drainage substrate mix, and the second area is the gutter around the outside, which will be filled with sand. The reason I did it this way is because I didn't want there to be any drainage layers or other substrate visible through the outside of the glass, so basically the outer gutter is a facade to improve the aesthetics of the design. In hindsight, I can see that I probably over-engineered this and I could have achieved what I wanted without building the dividing wall. Admittedly, I make mistakes quite a bit. The way I see it, even if something ends up being unnecessary, a bad idea, or otherwise doesn't work out how I'd hoped, it's still a win because I am practicing, experimenting, and learning. After the substrate divider was finished, I wanted to start playing around with the roots. I bought a bulk bag of them at a local fish store. These are the same type that I used in the Buce Ravine Terrarium build. This is not the final layout, but instead is a beginning prototype of just part of the root structure. Here are a few different angles so you can get a clear view of how I arranged the roots. Later in the Crown Forest video series, I'll be redoing some of this and then adding a lot more roots all around the stump, but first we'll need to add some substrate. All of that will be covered in the next video. If you want more videos like this one, the best thing you can do is hit the like button and then share the video with other people who'd also enjoy it and benefit from it. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon in part 3 of the Crown Forest build log.